This isn't Derek Acora. This is like the real shit.
You're still listening. This is our final transmission.
We're here, Jamie. I'm here. You're here. Welcome to Final Transmission, a podcast where Sam Russo, me, and Jamie Carruthers, talk about horror movies.
Yes, that's what this is, and that's what we do, and that's who we are.
Fucking
How are you
nailed
doing,
it.
Sam?
I'm fucking great, man. I could not be better if I tried. Probably, I would say, one of the top 5 days of my life. What about you? How are you?
I mean, I'm doing okay.
Yeah?
I'm fine.
Tell me more.
Yeah, day at work. We've been chatting for 90 minutes before we recorded, just about bullshit.
Stone Cold Pros. Preheat the oven for 90 minutes before talking for 35 minutes about a new movie.
Yeah, so this week, to try and, capture some of the hype, we're going to talk about a brand spanking new movie that came out in the UK back end of last month on Shudder, and it is Late Night with the Devil.
Late Night with the Devil.
David Dastmalchian,
101
which I think is German for
Dalmatians.
the milk, right?
The Milkman.
Yeah, David the Milkman.
David the Milkman, yes. And here he is on the podcast, introducing David. Can you imagine if David Dastmalchian was on?
I was hoping that David the Milkman was going to just be the same guy as Tom Bonahawk.
Do you know the Milkmen they still exist? There are still milkmen out there.
Yeah, I got a thing through my door the other year that was from like the modern milkman.
Right.
And there's nothing modern about it. He also brings you oat milk if you ask him to. Like,
so modern. That's a good milk service. There's a dairy near where I live, and the milk goes straight from the dairy to like a place where they have actual still like milk floats, milkmen, milk people, milk distributors, milkies.
Yeah. Milkies.
How come milkies never took off? Postman became posties. What about milkies?
The society that we live in could not handle people having bottles outside their houses.
Why? What would happen?
Because they'd be smashed.
They were smashed. I used to smash milk bottles all the time.
Well, there you go. I think I would.
Yeah,
I would steal milk bottles, full ones with milk in them.
Thing is, glass is pretty terrible for the environment, right? So I think glass is being phased out. What are people getting their milk delivered in? Are they getting like Tetra Paks, reusable Tetra Paks of milk? How does it work now?
I thought milk bottles were. I mean, this is already quite off topic.
Dave the Milkman. It's on topic.
But I think like milk bottles were okay because they would just be rinsed and
They
used.
would literally
right?
be reused. Yeah. I remember when they started doing orange juice in milk bottles, my fucking mind was blown out my ass.
My huge memory of like being in primary school was like having a bottle of milk every day.
Wow.
But it turns out that those bottles were tiny and I was just a small child.
Yeah.
But my memory is that they were full-size milk bottles.
I remember like the inch of cream you used to get at the top and you had to shake it and then...
Yeah, you're talking about my penis.
I am, yes. I'm referring to, of course, your penis.
Does that stay in? Do I edit that out? I don't know.
Leave it
All
in.
right.
So, Late Night with the Devil. When did you watch this? A couple nights ago?
So it came out on Monday, the 22nd of April.
Yeah.
And I watched it for the first time that following Sunday.
Mm.
Oh, we should probably preface this by saying we're going to be spoiler-free until we tell you we're not.
Yeah, and if either of us fuck up, we're just going to bleep it.
Yeah. So if you haven't watched it and you want to, you're safe until we tell you that you're not safe.
Yeah.
In which case, we're coming through the window.
Fucking right. So there was obviously some anticipation before you watched this movie, a thick head of cream already at the top of the milk bottle before you even sat down to watch this fucker. How did you deal with that anticipation?
The concept of this movie definitely got my dick racing.
I bet it did.
Like, I don't love found footage, but I do love found footage, much sexier cousin, the fake TV broadcast.
This is the sound of your dick as you're about to watch this film.
Yeah. They call me Dickie Doppler. That's what
They call you Dick Dastardly.
they call me. Doppler chopper.
So you like a fake? Is this a subgenre? Is this a fake TV show subgenre?
I think that there are enough of them that you could consider it a thing.
Okay.
But I don't know if you would ever consider it a subgenre. There aren't loads of them. There's obviously Ghost Watch. Obviously. There's a couple of episodes of Inside Number 9.
Mm-hmm.
Most recently, there was one called 3x3, which I really enjoyed, which is like a fake quiz show hosted by Lee Mack.
Nice.
That went to some fun places.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple of others. There was like the WNUF Halloween show that's also on Shudder. I mean, and that has some of the same issues that I think that Late Night with the Devil has.
Right.
Which is mainly around the performances and the fact that it's 2022 or whatever they made this, and you can't, with no money, have very good practical effects, and therefore you have fucking shocking digital CG effects.
So you're about to do a big spoiler then. Well done.
That just sort of pulled me out of it.
Right.
So how I reconciled my excitement, which was your question 45 minutes ago, was I just sort of watched it.
You went in like fairly even keel? You weren't like, holy shit, this is going to be amazing, or wow, I'm really skeptical about this. You were just sort of like, let's watch a film.
I mean, I had engaged with the trailer and I had engaged with some of the marketing beforehand.
Yep.
And I like DD, the Milkman.
Yep, Das Milchman.
And you know, I liked the concept, so I had some expectations, and that were mostly met. I really enjoyed it. There are some major glaring problems that I have.
Right. I'm glad you have some problems because I don't.
Do you not?
No.
And we'll get into them in a non-spoilery way, and then maybe also in a spoilery way.
Great.
Later.
A segmented approach.
Yeah. So what was your sort of approach when you watched it?
Well, this is a rare situation where I'd seen the trailer. I saw it.
We watched it together.
Yeah. And I was excited. Doesn't even really touch it. This film looked so fucking rad from trailer to grave. Like, I was just very, very excited about both, you know, the cast, the premise, the artwork was a fucking tease. Like, because I'd seen the trailer, I thought, fuck it, I'll just follow everything online, and kept up with the release schedule and how they were bringing it out slowly, and I thought all of it looked like genius. So when I finally got to sit down and watch it, I was really pumped. I was really excited, and it just didn't disappoint for me. I found it to be a really thoroughly entertaining watch from start to finish, and I'm really keen to hear what took you out of it a little bit, because there wasn't really anything that took me out of it, so to speak. There was just like some sort of jank moments that I thought just added to the charm. But I think I gave it a lot of rope because I was having so much fucking fun watching it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's worth saying that with all the problems that I have with it, which I will get into, I also just really loved it.
Yeah,
like I really enjoyed it. I thought the issues that I had, the moments that did pull me out of it, they never pulled me out of it so far that I was flopping around on the bed sheets. Like I was still in there a bit.
Didn't ruin it for you completely.
No, definitely not. I will always hold a newer film or a film that I haven't seen a million times to a completely unrealistic standard that I would not apply to, you know, Bad Dreams or a film that I watched when I was a child that has been with me forever. Like, I can be objective about this, and objectively, I thought it was really good.
Yeah.
Subjective, I can. Yeah.
Objectively, I think this is really good. Objectively, I think is fucking brilliant. That's the title of the episode for you. You know, I go into these things pretty fucking naive. Like I am just looking for a popcorn munching Saturday night good time, and that's why when something like this delivers that and loads more, I'm really, really happy with it, and just I feel like a real sense of satisfaction watching something this. I thought it was visually really pleasing to me as well. I love there's so much going on in the movie that that fits with a lot of things I like in horror movies generally, and broadly speaking, I know it's the same for you. But it felt like it was doing something original to me. But that's mainly because I lack the sample size that you have. I haven't seen any other movies that really do this. I was like, is this like The Running Man? That's how basic I am. But it made me think about what's possible in such a small space, in a TV studio. What's possible with a small cast in that context. This could go fucking anywhere as far as I'm concerned. It's going to be really interesting to see where it does go. And then it went somewhere not predictable, but not like wildly unpredictable. It went somewhere pretty comfortable in resolution for me.
Yeah, I thought it went exactly where I thought it was going. And then it also put a little cherry on the top and went to a place where I was like, oh, I mean, I wasn't really expecting that.
Yeah, there's a nice bonus.
Yeah, it went to exactly where I thought it was going to go, and then went a bit further, which I really did like. Why don't we drop a synopsis?
Oh, blimey.
A spoiler-free synopsis, Sam.
All right, spoiler-free synopsis. It's a horror movie. Dave, good old Dave Dasmouchin, plays a late-night television host whose show is flagging. The ratings are dipping. His popularity is waning. And in order to pull his career back from the brink, he puts on a very special Halloween night edition of his late-night talk show with an eclectic panel of interesting guests. Spooky, occult, exciting, provocative. The night does not go as he plans. And spooky hijinks ensue.
Spooky hijinks.
Am I allowed to? Is that?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Pretty spoiler-free.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, it's the 70s.
It is the 70s. It's 1975.
Yeah.
Which I believe they only set it in 1975 because that was the last time that Halloween fell on a Monday of Sweeps Week.
Really? So they were really fucking accurate there. That's interesting. Yeah. Because I thought, like, are they... I mean, the late night TV wars were a thing, and Carson was king, and everyone was trying to get Johnny Carson's popularity and trying to capitalize on the late night talk show vibe and how far they could push it. So I thought that's why it's in this era. But that's an amazing level of attention to detail. Yeah,
I think like that level of attention to detail is really interesting. And like a non-spoiler thing that I can talk about that is one of the things that pulled me out of it is like fairly early, there's a magazine cover that's specifically about the late night wars. And it's pitching Jack Delroy, which is Dave Dastmalchian's character, against Johnny Carson, and just the photo of Dave Dastmalchian doesn't look like a 70s photo,
right?
And it's against a photo of Carson from the 70s.
Yeah, real Carson.
So it looks really jarring because it's like it's not got the same grain. It doesn't look like it's not the same lighting style, and that's that sort of lack of attention to detail is one of the things that really bugged me throughout. Which is like the show doesn't look like a 70s talk show.
Right.
Or a 90s talk. It doesn't look like a talk show at all. It's shot with a million cameras, and the cameras are flying all over the place. They're doing stuff like bringing up VTs from stuff that they've just filmed 10 minutes ago. Like, it just, that stuff doesn't ring true to me. And like, on my first watch, that really bugged me. On my second watch, I didn't care. Like, I was over it. But like, it was one of those things that sort of irked me at the time because I was like, I really want to believe that this is really happening. Like I really want to buy into this as a non-fiction, which you can't because it very clearly is a fiction.
It is objectively fiction.
Yeah, but like I want to experience it as if it wasn't. I want to experience
that's the dream, right?
As if I was, listening to my radio in 1930 or whatever, and Orson Welles is talking about Martians or whatever. Like that's how I want to experience it.
Well, that raises a really good point because I thought to myself after this movie, what I was thinking like what would make that better, and I was really struggling to think of anything because I just flat enjoyed it front to back. But I did think to myself, some people are going to think that some of the visual effects are not maybe to the standard that they would like in a movie that really deserves maximum fucking special effects budget, in my opinion. But would this, do you think, two questions, would this have been better as a radio play?
I don't know about better. It could have been written in a way that would have really worked as a radio play.
Because you can shut your eyes and it fucking works. That to me is not to the detriment of the movie. I think it is such a strength when a movie works almost like independent of the visuals. I think that shows
Yeah.
some real fucking chops.
I think it works both ways as well. Like you can turn the audio off,
Yeah,
and you'll still get everything that's happening.
yeah,
Like
for sure.
those two things, they work together quite nicely in tandem. The thing that I think would maybe make it not work as a radio play for me is that I don't think that the performances are particularly strong.
Really?
Davy Milkman, he's always good, and he's doing a pretty good like late night host affectation type thing, which isn't always the most, what's the word?
It's like faults by design, really, isn't it?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
yeah.
But like the psychic and the skeptic, both of those guys are, I think, pretty terrible. The little girl who we'll get into when we're in spoiler area.
Yeah.
I thought she was pretty ropey.
Wow.
And like his little mate, his little sidekick didn't really like him,
Yeah.
and his producer in the sections that were in black and white and were meant to be more cinematic.
Yeah.
I didn't like him. I didn't like that they existed either,
Right.
because I want the conceit to be that this is really happening in front of me. I want it to be Ghostwatch.
Right. Okay. Yeah. You wanted it more found footage, essentially.
Yeah, I wanted it to be, this is what existed. This is Cloverfield. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We found
these are
this
the tapes
tape.
we recovered from the fucking burning building or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. And it works because like it's a live TV show. You never have to be like, well, who the fuck's editing all this together or whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Show me the editing suite.
yeah, exactly. So I really wanted to buy into that central conceit, and ultimately you can't, because the film does so much to be like, this is the conceit, but the conceit isn't. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
And on first watch, that did bug me. On second watch, I didn't care anymore because I understood that it didn't matter.
Sure. Yeah, and that's what I got straight away, was the idea that like let's take bits of these genres and then let's be pretty fucking postmodern and loosey-goosey with it and just say like, sure, found footage in theory, fly on the wall in theory, but we're going to break all those rules so we can show you more. And I think that's, fine.
Yeah.
I do like a hard, straight, fast Cloverfield style. We found these tapes. Or should I say Blair Witch 2, Book of Shadows style. But I much prefer, bending and breaking some of those rules for the sake of storytelling. My second quick question for you, though.
Go on.
Is this the best Shudder original movie?
No.
What is?
Psycho Gorman.
You look offended. Well, this is the thing, right? Because I thought every performance in this was head and shoulders above Psycho Gorman. But you love those performances. So what's got your goat here, bud? Because these are objectively better performances.
We can't talk too much about Psycho Gorman because that episode is coming out next week.
Oh, shit. Okay, my chronology is skewed here. My apologies, listening audience.
It's because I want to get this out in order to ride the coattails of this movie towards some downloads and some engagement.
Right, okay. Well, okay, so sticking just to this movie, I too, maybe was I fucking high or something when I watched this? I was just having a whale of a time. The psychic feels like a character whose performance would normally just kind of grind me a little bit. But I was like, this is some B-movie schlock. And nearly spoiled. And the things that he's doing and the way that he's doing them is so dumb that I'm fucking all in. He's not a likable character. He's not really a likable presence on screen for the most part. But his performance, I would say, is, by comparison, you're acting next to Dave the Milkman. Your performance is always going to be judged against the strongest performance on screen, which is clearly him. And yeah, there's a bit of a fucking here and there. But I just thought, do you know what? I can lean into this because it's almost like parody caricature territory. I thought the skeptic was annoying, but he was fucking meant to be. And I thought the kid was fucking great. I'm really interested to hear what you didn't like about Ingrid Torelli as Lily, because I thought she was fucking bang on. Scared the shit out of me.
So my major issue with the sidekick guy
Yeah.
is that, did you ever watch Larry Sanders?
Yeah, it's ringing a bell. What was Larry Sanders?
It was like a fake talk show where they would show you the talk show. It was Gary Shandling as Larry Sanders, and Jeffrey Tambor was like his sidekick. Hey
I
now,
love
Hank
Jeffrey
Kingsley.
Tambor. Oh yeah. I've seen a bunch of this. Yeah. Wow,
And like
Jesus, way back.
you would see the talk show, and then you would also see all the neurotic stuff happening behind the scenes. It was
Yeah.
groundbreaking and amazing. It's one of my
Yeah.
all-time favorite sitcoms. Well, the guy who is playing the sidekick in this looks a little bit like
He
a
does.
Jeffrey Tambor type,
Yeah.
and therefore it annoys me that he's not as good, as funny, as present as Jeffrey Tambor would have been in that role. And like casting somebody, and like I don't know what the situation around casting this guy was, but like the idea of casting somebody that is so close to that Jeffrey Tambor like archetype, and then ultimately being like not having anywhere near the presence of Jeffrey Tambor really was a bit of a beef for me.
Yeah, I liked him. Reese or Terry, I thought he was really lovable and very vulnerable and kind of squishy and adorable. And he goes through a lot in this film. And I think I can't really fault his performance in any like noteworthy way. What's really interesting is he seems to have only been in one other property on screen, and it's a short. This is early career for this guy.
Yeah, well, I think that tracks in terms of his performance. And like, I wouldn't be surprised if we were very early stages of the guy that plays Christo, who is the psychic, and the guy that plays Carmichael Haig, who is the skeptic. They both feel quite green in the way that they're sort of delivering these performances.
Yeah, well, it's tricky. I mean, I only watched this once, and I'm largely going off, how much fun I had in that first watch. I think a performance has to be a pretty specific kind of amateurish to really pull me out of it. And I was just kind of carried along by a pretty decent standard of performance, I think. And maybe I was a little generous because I enjoyed what I was seeing so much that I let shit slide. But nothing struck me as being like absolutely howling in this, really. Even the Christo character, which I did kind of struggle with a little bit. I think those characters have to be really strong. They're so important to the plot, and they're so instrumental in moving things along. A lot of their dialogue is real flashpoint stuff. A lot of their observations are pivotal to what we actually walk away from the film thinking we know. I think I would have been really bummed visibly and pretty immediately if I thought any of them sucked. So I just had a lot more fun than you, I think.
Yeah, well, I think, again, the Christo character,
Yeah.
he is a spoof of a real guy.
Yeah.
And
Great name, Faisal Bazi.
yeah, and that character, or the real guy, was spoofed much better in the X-Files with like the amazing Yappy or whatever his name was.
Right.
Do you remember those episodes?
No.
I think, is it in Jose Chung's From Outer Space, maybe?
Oh, that's one of your faves.
Yeah, it is one of my faves. It's not my absolute fave,
Yeah.
but it's up there. And Jose Chung's is the one where it's like, it's sort of Rashomon style, isn't it? And we're seeing the same story from people's different perspectives.
I think so, yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's that one. And like, because again, we're in these sort of archetypes, because these are based on real people. Same with Carmichael Haig. He's based on a real guy called James Randi, who was like a magician turned skeptic, which, I mean, happened quite a lot. Obviously, Houdini was also in that vibe.
Yeah.
But like, because we're dealing in archetypes and other people have done these archetypes better,
Right.
it did irk me a little bit. But what I would say is that I think that the performances are consistent across the movie, and that does ground you a little bit more. So if these performances aren't grating you, it's because they're all in the same movie. They're all acting the same way. Even David Milkman, who we know can act, and we've seen him act really, really well in like a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
Like where he's creepy. I mean, he really sells a lot of stuff here. There are a lot of like little moments where he looks at the camera or he looks at another character and really, really conveys exactly what we're supposed to be seeing in his face at that moment, whether it's like panic or love or guilt or whatever it is. We see all of that in these little looks, and I think it's one of probably the best performance in a very low budget horror movie that we've seen in a long time.
Yeah, that we're likely to see for a long time, I think.
Yeah.
It feels like a really controlled performance. He's not particularly wild in this. He's not hammy. He's not over-egging a stereotype, or at least like sometimes he feels like he's forced to overact for whatever fucking Hollywood reason. But in this, he feels like he's totally comfortable in the role and is in total control of his craft. Like, I just think it's a phenomenal performance because of the subtlety, exactly like you said. There's so much going on with subtle looks, glances, body language, decisions about movements, tiny little like this movie is probably not a movie for the kind of people who just find single setting movies boring. You know, those people who are like, oh, it's only set in one room, boring. You know, because he will move his shoulder in a way that is like an hour's worth of entertainment to me. Like he will just shift uncomfortably in his suit, and I'm wrapped. I think he does an incredible job leading this cast, leading this movie, and being the main character, who is very complex. You know, I'm sure we'll talk spoiler wise later, but you know, he's not always a character that you love, and I just think that's fucking spellbinding the way that he does that. He pulls off something pretty amazing.
Yeah, I think like it's worth. I'm going to try and say this without spoiling it, and if I can't say it, then I'll just edit this out. But like, this film isn't doing anything I don't think particularly original. I think what we're seeing is other films that we've seen before from an entirely new perspective,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's what is really interesting to me about it. Is that, I mean, I'm not going to say which films that we're seeing from a new perspective until
Because that'll spoil.
after the break, but
Yeah.
like we're seeing some really classic, important, amazing horror films from an entirely new perspective.
Yeah.
And I think that's just really interesting and really cool. And like I think that's almost better than doing something brand new, because like if it was brand new, I maybe wouldn't have bought into that so much. But the idea that I'm seeing a perspective on something that I know really, really well, that it just is way more interesting to me to approach it like that.
Yeah. I found it, you know, I wouldn't say like I watched it and thought, wow, this is so original. But it felt fresh to me because I don't have that. Like I said, I don't have the experience of watching lots of movies like it. To me, I was like, I wasn't struggling to find comparisons, but I wasn't finding many horror movies that I felt did the same thing as well. Look at it that way.
Yeah, well, I think when we get into spoilers, you'll completely understand where I'm coming from.
Whoa, holy shit. I guess that's why they call it Phantom Power.
Listen, Jamie, if there's one thing we can both agree on, it's that Red Scare looks after you. That's their main deal. They're always there for you. They've always got your back.
Yeah.
www.redscare.net when you need some love.
No matter what position you're in, they will help you. If you're feeling angry, they've got some angry shit for you. If you're feeling melancholic, they've got some sad shit. If you're feeling like you want to break into a car, there's Max Intruder. Like, it's all there. It's all there for you. If you feel like you want to drown yourself, you can jump into Lake Michigan with a sincere engineer. Like, have a great time.
Very good.
All the time.
That's probably Red Scare's real motto, right? Have a good time all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I stole that from Spinal Tap, but Red Scare can have it.
They can have it from you. Then it's not stealing. Have a good time all the time. RedScareIndustries.net.
All right, I'm back, Sam. Are you back?
Yeah, I'm back.
Are you feeling spoilery?
I'm feeling spicy spoilers coming my way like spiders on a Sunday in May.
So, again, spoilers. So the thing that I mentioned or alluded to before, regarding like seeing a different perspective, is that this is basically Rosemary's Baby from the point of view of John Cassavetes' character.
What?
Like in the movie Rosemary's Baby, John Cassavetes sells out Rosemary, his wife, and gets her impregnated by the devil so he can become rich and famous.
Right.
Obviously, that's not quite what happens here, but he sells out his wife. I don't know if you paid much attention to like the news articles and stuff that came up, but like in Rosemary's Baby, one of the actors that's got a part that he was up for has this really horrible accident, and so John Cassavetes gets the part. Well, the person that hosted the show that was in the slot that Jack Delroy's Night Owl show ends up in is killed in a like a lift accident, which I think is a reference to Damien the Omen 2, which is one of my all-time favorite deaths in a movie. That doctor, whatever his fuck his name is, in the lift, and the lift falls down and it cuts him in half. It's fucking great.
Another great Doctor.
Yeah, great film death. One of my earliest memories of watching someone die on film was that.
Yikes!
And I love it.
Back in 1979.
I love it very much. So, but I thought that was really interesting. I thought, like, because in Rosemary's Baby, you never really get a sense of the guilt of John Cassavetes' character. If he feels guilty, he never comes across like that. It's always just, this is a means to an end. And, like, you know, Rosemary didn't even have to die. Like, seeing the reverse of that with a character that is, you know, quite sympathetic, given with the time that we spend with him, and we see through those little looks his guilt and how much he loves his wife, and how much he's sort of gutted that he sold her out, but he, you know, the drive is just too much. I just think that's really interesting, and I really liked that.
Yeah, it's a really interesting parallel. I hadn't picked up on that, and I think, it's made all the more fascinating by the fact that his character is painted as somebody who has a kind of relatable struggle. Like, he's trying to succeed in a really difficult, you know, competitive industry. And from where we're sitting, he's mostly doing stuff really well.
Yeah.
You know, it's quite a fun show. There's that whole sequence in the middle about how he totally loses his way and has all this like horrific shit happening on the show that was really funny. But for the most part, he's sympathetic because we see him struggling with something that everyone can kind of relate to. He's trying his best. He's not getting his just desserts, and then he, you know, reaches for something more extreme and jeopardizes the things that he cares about the most. That's a compelling arc for a sympathetic character.
Yeah, but I think it's sort of hinted that he was always doing that. Like, he was always part of the Grove. He was always involved in I mean, also the Bohemian Grove stuff and all of the sort of fairly subtle occult stuff that's peppered throughout this is really, really well done. And like, you can engage with it on like a surface level, but if you know stuff about like Gnosticism and like Freemasonry and all of that stuff and all of the sort of secret society stuff, there's like, you just can enjoy it on a different or on another level, I think, because like, obviously they talk about the Grove and like the secret society that he's part of, and this satanic cult leader who's obviously based on Aleister Crowley, doing all the stuff that Aleister Crowley did, and then the Demon's Corner,
including
Brexis.
the goatee.
Yeah, exactly, and the whole outfit, the whole shtick is that. And it's just like, you can enjoy that, and you can understand what they're inferring, but like, if you understand that the Demon of Abraxas comes from like Gnostic mysticism, and like that Aleister Crowley was involved in like writing books about Gnosticism that are used by secret societies such as the Freemasons, who, you know, are the Freemasons cool? Like, is that a cool thing, or is there something freaky going on there? My stepdad was in the Freemasons, and he said it was fucking boring.
Yeah, most people, I think you're supposed to say that.
Well, he wasn't in it anymore, so what's the value? But then, like, I don't know.
Your soul.
I remember like
eternal damnation.
I remember being 17 and finding all these Aleister Crowley books in like my stepdad's bookcase and being like,
brilliant.
Are you
stealing my books?
Are we the same?
Yeah. Well, that is a great place for the movie to go. It's really fun. Like you said, it pays real homage and respect to quote unquote real shit. Like, you know, a lot of that shit is legitimately happening in the world around us, and especially doing it in the 70s just makes it way more fun as well. It's super occult fun times in the woods.
I mean, like, it completely feels in the same way. Have you watched House of the Devil?
No.
Okay, well, it deals with that sort of like satanic panic stuff, which was like really big around, I mean, it was more sort of early 80s, but like just like fitting it into this aesthetic, like the whole heavy metal is raping our children through backmasking or whatever, like all of that, it all fits in really well. And so applying it it to this sort of aesthetic, even if it like technically isn't quite right. I mean,
Mm.
obviously, the Anton LaVey stuff was around the late 60s. Like
Yeah.
the Aleister Crowley stuff was much earlier. Like, I mean, we know that Anton LaVey was just an edgy fucking guy being, pretty gothic and flouncing about, really.
Yeah.
But like, people bought into it. I mean, I bought into it when I was fucking 14, like, and that
Mm.
was in the 90s. So people don't get any more discerning, do they? And like, so yeah, I just think it's really cool. I think it's really cool and interesting that like you can watch it, you can understand it, but if you know other stuff, you just get more stuff out of it, which I always really rate. Like there are two. I watched it with Kaz, who doesn't care about Satanism or Gnosticism or any of that stuff, and she had a perfectly wonderful experience watching it.
Yeah, it's great because it's firmly rooted enough in pop culture now that everyone understands that, incorrectly what Satanism is.
Yeah,
But like that's the version that works in a trashy horror movie. So you have that on the surface, and then your deeper experience, like you said, is more rooted in genuine history, a lot of the evolution of those images in pop culture, a ton of interesting stuff about like shady Hollywood cabals and
yeah,
crazy orgies in the woods and shit. Just so many like amazing aspects of the creepy underworld of a weird industry at this time and place. Just peppered through and woven into the plot in a way that didn't feel like it was forced in. It felt like it naturally fit. It was always part of the main idea, and the characters just sort of move in and around it really seamlessly. It's clever like subplot work, I think.
yeah. I mean, it definitely must have been really early in the inception point of like writing this movie, because like so much of like the Bohemian Grove stuff is centered around owls. So obviously we've got the owl guy in the audience,
Yep.
and we've got the show's called Night Owls. Like it's really quite clever, but like it doesn't matter if you don't get that.
Yeah, you just sort of enjoy the creepy image of an owl.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally see that. And I think I had a bit of a kind of a dual experience through it, in that a lot of it was hitting, but I was just watching it for fun, so I was letting a lot of it wash over me.
Yeah.
But all that stuff you can pick up, you can leave. It all contributes to a beautiful aesthetic, a really well-crafted plot, and really good setup work for all of the main action in the final third.
Yeah.
Again, like in my opinion, great pacing, really, really easy to follow. Just fucking the tension. I think we need to talk a bit about the tension, because the tension feels really fucking high
Yeah.
a lot in this movie, and normally that's kind of an exhausting horror experience, especially if it's genuine tension. It's not like you don't feel like, oh, I suppose I should feel tense here. If you're really on the edge of your fucking seat, and I was for the vast majority of this movie, especially the second half, it was pretty fucking brutal.
I think the tension that you feel is really fun because the film has a very clear trajectory. Like,
Yeah.
and it's set up fairly early on that like a girl's going to come out. I mean, we've seen the poster, or we know vaguely, we've read the blurb on Shudder or whatever. Like we know what's going to happen. So the girl's going to come out. We're in a horror film, so she's going to be possessed by the devil or whatever. Then that's going to really happen, and that's the conceit. So we all know where we're going. So the tension is, it's not necessarily, oh God, what's going to happen? This is also tense. It's more like, okay, how are we going to get from here, this Johnny Carson-esque monologue, to there? Okay, this guy is obviously a fucking charlatan, fake cold reader or whatever. Like, again, how are we getting from here to there? And I think that's the interesting journey. And like, because we're taking it with Jack Delroy, Dave Dastmalchian's character, because he's so good and so nuanced, and like sometimes he's bad, but I think that's part of the TV host like persona, and so it just absolutely carries you along, and like you're with him all the way. And I think one of the things that I really, really loved. Now, I'm a sucker for an unreliable narrator,
Right.
but I really, really enjoyed being an unreliable viewer. Like
How do you mean?
so like in the hypnotism scene where
Yeah.
fucking hey now Hank Kingsley is hypnotized by the skeptic,
Yeah.
And like we see him rip his guts out, like we see that, and then we're told that we didn't really see that. And like he's like, oh yeah, I hypnotized you and the audience and the viewers at home. Like I love the idea of like this film is fucking with me personally. Like
Yeah. Seriously, third wall smashing.
Yeah.
Fun. Like me and Claire both looked at each other when he said that, and I think he looks at the camera.
Yeah.
I can't remember, but it's incredibly well done.
Yeah.
Really well done. Doesn't feel like cheesy bad Twilight Zone. It feels like great Twilight Zone.
Yeah, if I was Shudder or if I was the directors, I would shoot a version of the movie where you don't see the worms and like just randomly just switch it out every couple of weeks or something, just so like next time you watch it, that doesn't happen.
Yeah, so that people talk about it at work and they're like, "What fucking worms? What the fuck?"
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Like
some James Whale shit.
Yeah, exactly. That would be really cool. That's like, you know.
But it does enough of that to make you feel fucked with at the right points.
Yeah.
It keeps you totally engaged. I think the gore is pretty good. Do you have any thoughts about the gore effects?
The gore effects in that section I think are great.
Right.
I don't think the giant worm that pops out of his head or whatever looks good. But like
I kind of enjoyed that, but I don't really know on what level yet.
Like
I need to watch it again, maybe.
The pulling his guts apart and all the worms spilling out. I mean, that's amazing, and like his eye popping out and stuff. But like
the eye was great. Yeah.
The scene early on where like the Uri Geller guy is like spewing black blood, terrible, awful CG.
Not great, yeah.
So much CG blood when Hank Kingsley's neck gets broken. That's terrible. Really bad effect. Just looks like a terrible, weird little like cartoon.
Yeah, I didn't hate the neck that much, but I kind of like stuff like that. Like, you know, the fucking Night of the Living Dead 90 remake dummy thing that you hate. I love that shit.
Yeah.
The Sick was not great, but again, like I've seen so much bad CG blood that the Sick felt okay.
It's just like
I've been so ruined by all the really bad CG liquids that didn't feel too awful.
I just think like the physicality of it isn't there. Like the physics of it doesn't quite work. Is what I find really jarring. It's like it doesn't move like
his body doesn't do what the liquid dictates, and the other way around.
The projectile vomit wouldn't act like that when you move in that certain way. It's just like it's just not quite right. And like that was a little bugbear for me.
It would also, again, it's another one of those things that would just be better if the actor did a Sick.
Yeah.
Did an act Sick. Yeah. Always would be better.
Or like fucking put one of those little spray hoses like here.
Yeah.
Like
some practical spray. Yeah. Something like it's always better.
Yeah. The reason that they don't do that for stuff like that is so they don't have to clean costumes and sets and stuff. So they saves time and saves money. But I don't think really it affected my enjoyment. It pulled me out a little bit. It made me sort of think, all right, yeah, this is a movie from 2024 or maybe it isn't a movie from 1990 or 1975 or whatever. Like,
sure.
And like again, I think the way that it's shot, it doesn't look right, and that bothered me the first time, but it didn't bother me as much the second time. A thing that I enjoyed the second time, but didn't really catch the first time, was I enjoyed his dead wife just sort of popping up every now and then.
Yeah, I missed the first couple because Claire kept looking at me and going like, "Fuck, did you see that?" And I was like, "No, what are you talking about?" And then like maybe when it starts getting a little bit more obvious, or I'm told to look for it, I saw it more, which is the best kind of thing. 'Cause you don't want it to be totally obvious and telegraphed to every member of the audience, and you want to pepper it into different places. So like, okay, I was looking at every shiny surface for a long time and it didn't pop up, and then it did somewhere I wasn't expecting it, and yeah, I thought it was good. Like, oldest trick in the book, but really well done.
Yeah.
It was
on my
ghostly.
first watch, I only really noticed it when it's massively telegraphed, and then like, is it when they watch some of the footage back and she's there, and then it cuts back to outside of the footage and her hand's on his shoulder.
Yeah,
I was like, oh shit, there's a hand on his shoulder, so she's been there the whole time. That's the implication. I get it now. And then when I watched it again, I clocked a couple of others, like when he's getting his makeup touched up and she's just there in the mirror, and a few other bits like that.
That was fucking creepy.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of looks like ass.
Yeah, it doesn't look great, but again, I was just reading it as like, this has to be a little bit of a take on 70s horror effects, because, you know, we're set in the 70s. This is a massive love letter to so much, you know, horror media that's coming out at the time. maybe some of this can be given a bit of room because it's trying to look a little bit shitty. You can't say that about the broken neck and the sick because it's fucking CG.
Yeah.
Do you think filmmakers are getting a bit lazy with stuff like that, where they're thinking to themselves like, "Fuck, we gotta get this guy's neck to break"? And I'm not talking about like practical effects versus CG. I'm just saying like, do you think there's a conversation where they go, "It's all right, we'll just do it with CG, and then we don't have to worry about moving the camera. It's just a static shot, and we'll break his neck." Whereas if it was a practical effect, they'd have to do different angles. They'd obviously need a lot more. There'd be more like movement and work involved,
Yeah.
right? So do you think people are saying like, "Well, he needs to be sick, so let's just fucking do it in CG, so we don't have to fuck around. We'll just keep the camera here, and he'll be sick."
Yeah, I think you can almost maybe give these people a pass here because they're shooting. They're at least trying to shoot something that looks like a late night talk show. So we're not going to
True.
have those quick cuts of like
Yeah,
like the way
your angles are limited. Yeah,
the way that you would do the neck breaking scene in a way where you could do quick cuts or you could do different angles is that you show his head turning and then you cut to him wearing his suit jacket backwards or whatever. And
Yeah.
it's like,
yeah. See, I would have fucking way preferred that.
well, yeah, me too.
But yeah, it's harder, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like you're almost dictated by the medium of the movie.
Do backwards. I love it already. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Totally. I just wonder, like broadly, if that's like a horrible ubiquitous thing that happens on
Almost
set. People are like,
definitely.
fuck it, we'll do it with CG. Like, ugh.
It just means like
Horrible.
we don't have to do a million takes. We don't have to do a million setups. We
Yeah.
don't have to get a cleaning person in to clean everything up in between takes. Like,
Yeah.
it just makes things a million times easier.
Must be a horrible concession to make when you see the final thing and it's garbage.
Yeah.
You're just like, fuck, if only we just moved that one camera. Like, Jesus. And again, I don't think they were terrible effects. I think they were among... I think they're all shit. So me saying they're the best of a shit bunch still means I don't like them. But I thought they were pretty passable and quick enough and out the way and you know, basically fine.
Yeah.
Did you like the effect of the girl's big, like, toothy, scary grin face when she turns around at one point? Do you remember that? She had like a big, gaping, kind of scary dog mouth.
Yeah, that sort of reminded me of like there's an effect in Fright Night, which is bad. And the effect in Fright Night, the guy who made the special effect was like, "This is shit, and I don't want you to use
really?
it." And they were like, "It's okay, we'll only shoot it in very dark scenes." And then they put it on the
Yeah.
on the poster.
On the cover. Nice one, Dix.
Yeah,
Yeah,
But it's-
because I found the girl's performance so scary and unnerving that when they did that, I was like, oh yeah, fucked it. Like you could have just had her being scary. You don't need to give her a dog mouth.
I really
Modern
loved
audience, I guess.
the when her head splits open and she's like full demonic crazy town. Like
That was amazing.
that was like, I mean, it was sort of an effect that you would see in like one of the VHS movies.
Yeah, for sure.
But I loved it. Like it felt practical. It felt like drawing of electricity that we both like very much.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
that sort of Ghostbusters
Yep.
vibe. And yeah, it felt really practical. It almost felt like they had borrowed a Victor Crowley like prosthetic.
Yeah. The split head was great, and the whatever the fucking effect was with all the color and light was awesome as well. And I think it felt out of place in the movie, but in a way that is really surprising and refreshing
Yeah.
because it feels like you've gone to another dimension, which maybe you have. I don't know. But it didn't feel like, oh, that's aesthetically jarring. It felt, wow, you've gone somewhere fucking bonker
Yeah.
donk, and it's brilliant.
I feel like because what they're doing, like you said, is that they are sort of referencing specific 70s and 80s movie style like makeup tropes and effects tropes, and then they bring in something that is completely modern and realistic, not realistic,
Yeah.
but like modern, and uses modern technology to create those effects in a really interesting and believable way. So it's like, okay, this isn't a trick, this isn't Derek Acora, this is like the real shit in big quotes.
Yeah.
And I really bought that, and I also completely love that guy being like, you know what, I'm gonna completely give myself over to the devil right now because
Yeah.
this shit's happening in front of me. I was like, fucking
Yeah.
mad respect for doing that. It's really,
Yep,
really
just
good.
fucking change sides. Let's go. I'm yours. I will be your eternal minion. Yeah, I love that. Great, end sequence there. The whole thing front to back. I really enjoyed. What did you think of the sudden ending cut back to Dave Milkman stabbing the girl? What did you? Is that the bit you were talking about that was kind of the cherry on top?
Yeah,
that you didn't hate but enjoyed.
That was the bit that I was referring to. That whole sort of bit after the madness. Like, you could easily cut to credits at that point. You could easily end the transmission, like at the point where she's all demoned out and going crazy.
Yeah.
Go to the static. You even get the face in the static, which we sort of get before it cuts back. And that would be fine, I think. I would be perfectly happy for it to end there. I like that it carries on. I don't necessarily like where it goes. I don't quite understand what they're really going for in like the traveling through scenes that we've already seen, but with Dave Dastmalchian now knowing what he knows in the future.
Yeah.
I don't really understand the point of that. And then, like, we really nail on the sold his soul to get famous shit through the scene at the Grove where he has to drink the drink, and then the scene where he's talking to his dead wife.
Yeah.
I don't think we needed to really nail that. I wonder if that was we're not quite happy with the ending and we want to go back and maybe make it a bit clearer.
Yeah, it did feel, I'm not going to say it felt too much, but it was more than I needed, for example.
I think it's more than anybody needs, but like some people might want, which, I disagree, but whatever, that's fine. I did think it was cool that when we cut back to him and he stabbed the girl and everybody's all dead around him and the audience have run away, and he's like saying the thing to try and unhypnotize himself or whatever. Is this all a hallucination that we're seeing as a result of something that's happened in the show? And that's an interesting place to end it, I think. It almost makes it okay that we've had to go through all of this really nailing on what's actually going on in the movie to get to that vaguely sad and lonely and relatively interesting ending. But
yeah,
for the most part,
I think I feel almost exactly the same. Yeah, I when it cut back to it, I was like, ooh, cheeky.
Yeah.
But didn't love it, didn't hate it. Just thought, cool ending. Like that's a good place to leave it because it makes you talk, it makes you think.
Yeah.
And again, kind of classic. That shit was very the thing in the mid to late 70s, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
People just discovering you can subvert audience expectations with a quick, weird twist at the very bitter end. The last twist of the knife. Yeah, I liked it. And I did think about the ending more after the movie than I would have if it had just cut with her going bananas with shit flying out of her head, which was very good too.
Yeah. I wanted to understand more about the skeleton guy who was just in the audience.
Yeah, it felt like if that was a MacGuffin, it wasn't rewarding because nothing happened, right?
Yeah, well, like, I guess he was part of the whole thing. He was somehow involved, obviously, in the Grove stuff, and like was obviously not getting involved in any of the fun stuff that was happening in the show. Like, he didn't want to take part in that at all.
Yeah.
So, like, is it just that someone from the Grove had come down to? They knew it was all going to go to shit tonight, and so they wanted to come and get a third row seat for it.
yeah.
But like maybe it was that, but like I have to speculate that, which is also completely fine. But I would like to
totally fine. Yeah.
I mean, I was just complaining that the movie explained everything, so like.
Well, yeah, I'm glad it's not resolved in a way, but it left me worried. And again, this is probably good filmmaking. It left me worried I'd missed something, which made me pay more attention.
Yeah.
So those little moments of discomfort, I think, are really important, especially in a movie like this, which is supposed to be, pushing those boundaries and subverting those classic boring audience spectator experiences.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of respect for that if that's what happened. I really hope it wasn't just like something that they set up and never resolved, because that would suck.
I mean, that's also fine because that would happen in 70s movies and like...
True, all the time. Yeah, characters would just fucking disappear mid-sentence. Yeah.
So like, if they did it, they didn't do it by accident, regardless of whatever they did.
And I think it just added to the menace. It started bringing in... Realistically, it was quite early, was it? It started bringing in menace where you thought, because I didn't know everything about what was going to happen in the movie, I did think like, well, what if there's a guy fucking goes nuts and takes people hostage, and that's what precipitates the crazy shit that comes next?
Yeah.
Or, there's a lot of mileage in just putting a fucking stoic skeleton in the audience. I thought it was quite clever,
Especially because the skeleton looks quite goofy. So like the
Yeah.
idea that like you take this quite goofy looking person in a head to toe Halloween costume and you just sort of make them scary by having them not engage with the fun thing that you're doing.
Yeah,
Like this,
that was cool.
It's almost like the killer clown or the psycho clown thing that happened in the UK 10 years ago or whatever, where it was just like clowns standing, staring. Like that's way scarier than a clown running at you with a knife somehow.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally. And the fact it was a bit of a throwback to the fucking Halloween 2 mask, the skull looked very Halloween 2. I thought that was just a nice touch.
Halloween
Silver
3.
Shamrock or whatever the fuck it is.
3.
Halloween 3, correct, yes.
Season of the Witch.
Season of the Witch.
What witch? What season?
Yeah, no witch, no season.
Well,
Halloween 2 is a completely different movie.
Yeah. Halloween 2 is, it's Halloween again.
Yeah, but with...
It's Halloween, but
I always feel
tomorrow.
bad for the kid that gets fucking smashed by the car. Ben Tramer. Fucking horrendous death scene.
Yeah.
So it does a lot, this movie. Who would you recommend this movie to? Because I feel like it's kind of an everyone pleaser.
I think it's an everyone pleaser. I think there are some people that will be like, this is slow paced in a way that I don't enjoy. And I think
True.
like it's doing that for a number of reasons. I think it's that's a 70s thing again. They're paying some homage there. And I think like narratively, we have to get from one part of the show to the next. And like
Yep.
we have a 3 guest structure the same way that a show would. Like I think it's fun. I think the weakest stuff really is the demonic possession little girl stuff.
Yeah, that was fine.
Like when she levitates and all that, I just thought, all right.
Yeah, it's something that doesn't really scare me, like kids being possessed. That's not the scary part of The Exorcist, is it really?
No. I mean,
it's part of it.
Yeah, and like Reagan in The Exorcist is much scarier than the little girl in this. And like Captain Howdy is much scarier than Dr. Wiggles or whatever the fuck his name is.
Yeah,
Like
fucking
so
Mr. Wriggles.
Yeah. So like
Yeah.
even like when Reagan is being very possessy, she's jabbing crucifixes into her vagina and saying your mother sucks cocks in hell, whereas this person's like, oh, where's your wife, dude? Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. And that's an interesting, all of these things we're saying, you would think that this movie would be somehow pretty heavily criticizable for being so derivative. But there's something loving in the execution that doesn't make you think, fucking hell, what a ripoff. We've seen all this before. Fuck me. Do you want to fucking tell us a little bit more about the history of horror movies? It's like compendium of everything from 70 onwards and a little bit before. But it doesn't feel like that. It feels really lovingly done. And it doesn't feel like a cop-out anywhere, really, in the movie. It does. I thought it felt like a fairly original movie viewing experience, having not had an enormous amount of... movie studio found footage type experiences. So I had a pretty round enjoyment of it, but I'm wondering, there might be an audience out there, like you said, that think like, holy shit, keep doing the same shit. They might be really critical of the inspiration points and how it's executed, but I don't see that personally.
I just think there are people that can't handle 70s movies right now.
True.
So like they probably wouldn't enjoy this because it's paced like a 70s movie, but it's also paced like a talk show. Which
I thought was great. I loved being there for the whole fucking talk show.
Yeah.
It felt so comfortable. You got so settled with the scene that you were in. I felt like I knew where everything was. It was really, really comforting and subverted so well by so much discomfort.
Yeah.
It was so clever.
I really would have liked it if it was actually shot like it was
through the actual cameras.
Like it was a talk show, and we didn't go off into these weird little cinematic behind the scenes bits. Or if we did, maybe they would be handheld and like somebody always shoots behind the scenes stuff every night because they're
some fucking intern or something. Like Be Real. Yeah.
So like I would be into that if they sort of, but they made a choice to make it
Yeah.
to say this is a movie, this isn't real found footage.
Yeah.
And I respect it. It wasn't what I would have done, but okay.
Sure.
And I've said 8 times now that on my second watch it didn't bother me at all because I got to grips with it.
Yeah.
But like there is something just really nice about being in this one place. I mean, if they were to have done it the way that I would have liked to have done it, there would be big sections where there was nobody on the stage because they were all getting their makeup done in the ad breaks or whatever.
Yeah.
Or maybe you would do it. We're in sort of WNUF territory here, so like it was recorded off the TV, so then you get adverts in between, but then the adverts would have to not be spooky, funny adverts.
Did you say WWF?
WNUF.
Oh, you're like, we're in fucking SmackDown territory now.
Well, WNUF.
What's WNUF?
It's a similar thing. It was like a Halloween special news broadcast.
Ah, cool.
It's also on Shudder, and it was like the news devolving into a scary thing.
Nice.
But again, shot like it was videoed off the TV, so it has
Right.
adverts and news reports and all kinds of fun stuff. It's good.
Sure.
It's very similar to this in as much as like the performances are all a bit low budget actory type performances, but
Yeah.
they're all consistent with each other. Like we're not in 20 different people in 20 different movies territory.
That's definitely one of the things that worked best for me was the slightly unassuming way that it took the idea of being found footage and single set and bent it in a subtle way that didn't rip you out of the movie. But I had a lot of the same feelings as you. I thought because I love the way those old cameras look.
Yeah.
I like seeing them from the side and watching them move around, but I also like seeing through the lens. So maybe there could have been more explored there with that. But I loved the band. I loved all the interactions felt a little bit threadbare, which I really liked. Everyone was just maybe a little bit tired and just had that real like sort of not quite tawdry and sleazy late night TV feeling. It still felt fairly family oriented, but there was always an edge that something was fucked and everything was past its best.
Yeah.
And I found that really, really enjoyable as a general like vibe and aesthetic. Definitely, I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I wondered if they didn't script some of those interactions, or like
Yeah,
I would maybe, if I was making this, I would obviously write a monologue for Jack Delroy, but then not script the banter between him and his little sidekick.
yeah, that would be really interesting to see because that's the real life TV experience.
Yeah.
And, you've got a cast that's obviously spent some time together, and there's been rehearsals and there's been reads and whatever else. But you could throw in some real fun, curveballs and show a lot of personality there. And yeah, like you said, maybe they did. They might have done it so well we didn't even know.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is cool.
It is
Again,
cool.
it leaves you with so many the right kinds of what ifs. It makes you walk away and think like, well, I enjoyed that big time. I wonder how much of it was deliberate.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool. How much of this is good filmmaking? How much of it is
Products of budget and
budget, happenstance,
Yeah.
luck, all those things. Yeah.
yeah. I really really liked it, and I knew I was gonna like it, and then early doors I was like, okay, I'm not loving this
Right.
because of all these minor things that were pulling me out. I didn't really like the scene setting montage of like stuff from in the first 10 minutes or whatever it was.
Right.
I understand why it was there, but it just felt like there was probably a better, more coherent, like non-diegetic way to do that. Like to
Yeah.
have the opening credits be a series of clips or whatever. Or,
It's quite a long story going in, I guess. There's a lot of scene setting there.
yeah.
I mean, I like that kind of stuff. I fucking love a recap. I love, like you said, a narrator, reliable or unreliable. I fucking love a montage.
Yeah.
So I was fucking flying through this movie.
I think
I was doing everything I like.
I think I would have been again okay with that if, and I mean I am okay with it. I'm not okay with it, but like I would have been much happier with it if it was like, here is a documentary about this thing that happened on TV, and therefore we don't see the weird cinematic behind the scenes footage or whatever. Or we're interspersed with talking heads of like, I was in the audience that day and I got
Sure. Oh, that's not a bad shout. Yeah.
I got the willies jammed up me or whatever. Like,
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. The audience maybe a little bit underutilized here and there. Interesting take.
Yeah, like there were another tiny thing that irked me is that like we see the audience, they're there, but the laughter feels like not real laughter.
Feels canned, yeah. Yeah, I kind of like that. I think, do you know what? One of the things I love the most, and again, high praise, is the various cover art iterations of a kind of a similar theme. But the one, I feel like it's really Scanners, the one where his fucking head is just fire.
Yeah.
I think it looks amazing. Beautiful fucking artwork.
Yeah, my favorite is the one with like the TV with the spiral and it's got the horns on it. Like that's
the horns, yeah, that's tattoo worthy. That's some very cool shit.
Yeah, if I didn't already have a tattoo of a TV, I would probably get that.
You can never have too many TV tattoos.
My TV tattoo says horror movies. Which is on the nose, but
bang some fucking devil horns on it. You'll be flying.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, dude, the fact that the fucking co-host is dressed like a devil, they're just a lot of good banter.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful aesthetic all the way through. All this like orange, yellow, kind of red, it's 70s as fuck. Really convincingly so a lot of the time.
Can I ask you a question, Sam?
Go on.
Do you know when he's playing the theremin at the beginning and the guy's like, you don't touch it? Did you think he was just going to go over and grab it and make the most horrible noise you've ever heard in your life?
Again, great use of tension. Like, who the fuck? How many movies have you seen where there's a real pinch point of tension around a theremin?
Yeah.
Like, the second most awkward use of a theremin I've ever seen in this movie, for sure.
What's the most awkward use of a theremin?
I went to see Black Flag in Dusseldorf, and there were 6 people there. Me, Jimmy Islip, Tom from Goober Patrol, and 3 other people. And Greg Ginn did a 13-minute theremin solo. And it was fantastic. It was one of the best things I've ever seen in my life musically. It was fucking phenomenal. But around the 6-minute mark, we were looking at each other like, what the fuck is happening? Mike Vallely was singing in Black Flag, and he was just stalking around the crowd, like beefing people, while we all just watched Greg Ginn go nuts on a theremin.
I bet it's like it almost works like a Stuart Lee joke. Like around minute 6, you're like, fucking hell. And then around minute 8, you're like, oh my God, the genius of this.
Yeah, and then I only started timing after, honestly, probably like 3 minutes. And so it could have been close to 20 minutes of theremin. It was unreal. Yeah, punishing, but great fun.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget it. Look at it that way.
Who else was in Black Flag at that time?
Robo.
Nice.
Or Robbo. I don't know. What do people say? Robo?
I think we say Robo. I only...
Yeah.
Because I've got some live bootlegs of Misfits, Graves era Misfits, when Robo was in them. And
nice.
Is it Robo and Des Cadena at the same time?
So it's Robo, Des, Greg Ginn, and fucking Mike Vallely. And Mike Vallely's band opened up. Can't remember what they're called. Maybe the Street Rats or something like that. And they had a song called "Knife in the Face."
Nice.
And he was just running around screaming "Knife in the face" over and over. And because there were so few people there, everyone got it screamed directly into their face at least once. And I think he did it to me like 3 times. So I was just screaming it back. It was great.
That was a Ben Small throwing stuff move, isn't it?
Big time, yeah. Fucking every crowd I've ever seen throwing stuff play to was much bigger than this. And this was fucking Black Flag.
Yeah. I guess the Germans don't have time. Imagine the Germans. The Germans watching Black Flag in that situation.
And the 13-minute theremin solo.
The conversation afterwards, like, oh, I really like the old stuff. Why didn't you play the old stuff?
Yeah.
Why did you play the
theremin? The theremin solo was great. Everything else was shit. Unlikely. Yeah, it was rough. It was bizarre.
Like, I can't imagine that Greg Ginn would appreciate the German compliment. Do you know what I mean?
I bet he's had his fair share. Jesus. I had a good chat with Greg Ginn. I feel like I learned a thing or two about being socially awkward. Yeah, it was a fucked up, crazy night. But I mean, I love the inclusion of the theremin in this movie because it is so of its time and
Yeah.
it's so fun and it's used with such silly goose fun innocence. And again, but you always think something's gonna fucking happen with that theremin. Like so much menace in this movie around placement of people and objects.
Yeah, it's like, what film was it? Oh, it's Intruder, where they spend that whole scene in the manager's office where like we're looking
Yep.
at the receipt spike,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
like
And
yeah, and it's very similar with a theremin, and it's a similar object. Like it's a long, fairly spiky, thin object that could go easily in anybody's eye.
yep, absolutely.
So like, yeah,
Yeah, clever. I mean, the more I talk about this movie, the more I reflect on how much I enjoyed it the first watch,
Yeah.
and the more I think dude, this could be a movie I watch at Halloween this year. You know, it feels like one that I could definitely watch again.
yeah.
Serious rewatch value, oodles of fun, but still quite a serious and downbeat movie for the most part. It's pretty fucking bleak, and a real twisty turny morality tale. Some wonderful performances and a ton of really great attention to detail. As you said, not always flawless in execution, but a real good fucking romp. Again, it feels like a unique little nugget. It's dark, it's punishing, it's bleak, but it's really fun.
Yeah.
And it's super low budget, but it feels pretty sophisticated in its execution. Everything it does with its component elements tastes fucking delicious. It's kind of the Ramones of modern horror movies.
Yeah, I can totally see that. I think, like, I don't think it's derivative, but I think it has a firm basis in the subject matter that it's looking at, and I think,
In the classics.
yeah, and all the things that it's referencing or the touch points, they're all presented in a way that haven't been presented before, or if they're not presented in the way that hasn't been, or in a new way, then they're doing that for a reason. Like the shitness of the possession stuff is like, we're seeing that in a way that is lit for TV. We're not seeing it through horror movie lighting, and that's why I think some of the makeup looks so shit, or looks not great. But I think that's great. I think we're looking at things in a different way, and like literally physically, we're looking at them through a 70s late night TV camera.
Yeah.
So it's always going to be cool as a result of that. And like I say, I think there's a bunch of things that are wrong with it, but for the most part, it doesn't really affect my enjoyment of it at all. Like the things that pulled me out of it, the tiny little bits of things. I mean, there are maybe 8 or 9 moments that are like, oh, I wish that wasn't like that. But like, that's 9 moments in what, an hour and a half, 2 hours worth of movie. Like,
Yeah.
I'll take it. I'll absolutely.
I mean, that's
take
another
it.
thing. It's 1 hour 33, and I felt like I'd been watching a movie in the best possible way for easily 2 hours.
Yeah.
Because of the pace, it's just such a well-paced movie, and the more that feels like massive value and immersion to me. If a movie feels longer than it is in a good way, that's so fucking rare.
Yeah.
Kudos, hats off, top marks, well played.
Yeah. So, do you want to give us a score, Sammy?
Yeah, sure. I think I'm gonna give this 8.5 giant worms crawling out of my skull out of 10.
That's a perfectly reasonable score, I think.
It might be a little high, but I'm flying high on how much fun I had, and I just remembered how good the effects are on Christou's eyes when he goes nuts.
That is probably my favorite effect in the whole movie, because it's like, it's quite subtle.
Yeah.
It's not subtle because it's right in your fucking face, but it's like,
But it's kind of fluttery and it looks so painful.
Yeah.
There's just, it's a good eye effect. I mean, things that knock it up above 8 for me, honestly, are performance based. Like, I loved Laura Gordon's character, June Ross Mitchell. I really did rate Ingrid Torelli as Lily. She nudged it over the line for me because I found her fucking so unnerving in this role, and her portrayal was just, exactly what I want out of a scary kid. And I love Dave. I love Dave Milkman. So for all the reasons aforementioned, and probably more on a second watch, I really think this is an incredible horror movie, and I had a fucking blast watching it. Thanks for shoving it in front of me, bud.
Well, the world shoved it in front of me. My score, I think, by the way, not that you asked, not that you're interested, mate, but
Normally, after one of us does our score, the other one does.
I'm right there with you. I think I would give this 9 wives dying of cancer out of 11.
You went there. Out of 11.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a classic.
All
It's
right.
classic 9/11.
Yeah. That's it. So, yeah, I mean that's the most problematic score we've ever had on the Final Transmission podcast.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening.
I
past tense,
would
'cause
love-
You're not going to listen anymore.
I would love to hear from you. You've watched this movie. Everybody in the world who cares enough about horror films to listen to us talk for however fucking long this edit ends up being.
5 minutes.
Yeah. I'm interested in hearing what you have to say about this movie, Late Night with the Devil. So there are a number of ways that you can get in touch with us. One of them is you can email us at finaltransmissionpod@gmail.com. Another is that you can follow us on all of the social media sites. That's TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram at FT Horror Show. And if you follow us on any of those, you can also send us a message or comment on an image or say something to someone about something. I don't know. I've been talking for 4 hours. I've gone insane.
I think Jamie's right. I think you should do all of those things.
You should also just tell your friends about this podcast. Say, hey, have you heard of Final Transmission? And they'll say, no, that sounds boring. And you say, well, actually, it's not, because Jamie edited out all the boring stuff. And now it's just the good stuff.
Jamie edited out all the boring stuff that Sam said. You should, listen, fuck me. You should be talking about this on the school bus. This is a great movie. Flap your gums. Tell people about this podcast because we have opinions that you may or may not agree with. So get on board. Give us a rating if you can and/or a review. I love having this reviewed. I think it's very healthy and very good for us to receive some feedback from listeners. So please do that. And if you're going to email us, give us a minute. We got a fucking stack of these things to work through. We're replying to everyone one at a time. Just, give us a hot minute here. We're busy people. But get in touch, be a fan, be a friend, and take risks.
Yeah, and worship Satan.
And always worship Satan.
Yeah. I had a AJJ koozie from that first tour they did over here with Kepi that said, drink beer, worship Satan, and I fucking lost it, and I'm so sad. I think about it all the time.
That's brutal. It probably had Andrew Jackson Jihad written on it as well.
It did have
right?
Andrew Jackson Jihad written on it, yeah.
Oh, those were the days.
Those were the days.
What a great band.
What? I was listening to AJJ this morning. Bangers. Bangers on bangers.
I've been listening to nothing but Cheekface for about 3 weeks. I think it's scrambled my mind.
I think I'd rather have a scrambled mind than listen to Cheekface. And on that note, we will listen to you. No, you will listen to us another time.
Good night, everyone. Thanks for listening to Final Transmission. Bye.